Welcome to another episode of Dating Decoded.
Today we are diving deep. Get ready for Speed Mingle Unfiltered.
Picture this, you're standing in a crowded, dimly lit bar on a Friday night. The music is like pulsing just a little too loud.
Oh, I know that feeling all too well.
Right. You got a drink in your hand, the ice is slowly melting, and you're just desperately scanning the room.
And you catch someone's eye, just for a fraction of a second.
Exactly. But instantly, a dozen calculations just flood your brain. Like, are they single? Are they waiting for a partner who's just in the bathroom?
If you walk over there, are you interrupting a private conversation?
Yeah, or are you going to be perceived as creepy or charming or just annoying? I mean, the sheer cognitive load of trying to read the invisible social rules of the room is totally paralyzing.
It really is. So what do?
You pull out your phone, you just stare at a screen, retreating to the safety of a digital world where, the rules are clear, the rejection is invisible, and you have total control.
We have all been there. It is utterly exhausting.
So exhausting. And I'm your host, by the way, ready to jump into our deep dive today.
And I'm the expert here to unpack all the psychological layers of this, because what you just described, it's really the defining social paradox of our time.
Okay, say more about that.
Well, we retreat to our screens because we crave absolute predictability, right? We want the beautifully frictionless binary system of the digital world.
Tap a screen for Thai food and it shows up.
Exactly. You swipe right on a profile and you either get a match or you don't. Yes or no. Buy or do not buy. We've engineered the friction completely out of our daily lives.
And we've applied that exact same tap and swipe engineering to human connection, to romance, to friendship.
Which is a huge problem.
Yeah.
Because human connection is inherently built on friction. It requires nuance, vulnerability, unpredictability.
You can't just sanitize socializing with an algorithm.
Right. But by trying to do that, we've created a landscape that is just suffering from massive digital app burnout.
Digital app burnout. That is such a real phrase.
It is. We've never been more connected on paper, yet we're utterly starved for real, tangible, multidimensional human interaction.
And that profound sense of exhaustion is exactly what we're looking at today for our deep dive. We are unpacking this whole phenomenon where you're just endlessly pulling the lever on a digital slot machine.
Swiping, swiping, swiping.
Yeah, just hoping for a jackpot of human connection that honestly rarely pays out.
So true.
So we have this really fascinating stack of sources in front of us from the organizers of an event called the Sip Sizzle Speed Mingle.
It's happening on Tuesday, July 28th, 2026.
Yep, at a venue called the Vine Barley in Port St. Lucie, Florida. But, this isn't just a flyer for some local mixer.
No, not at all. The materials provided by the organizers, that's HRB Universal, LLC, they read way more like a philosophical manifesto on modern loneliness.
They really do. They're making a tremendously bold claim here.
They're essentially positioning this single event as the antidote to the algorithm. They're prioritizing what they call IRL and real-life chemistry.
And they're doing it not by just throwing people in a room and, crossing their fingers, but by meticulously reverse engineering the exact pain points we just described in that bar scenario.
Right. They want to cure that digital app burnout by creating a highly structured, heavily engineered, real-life social ecosystem.
So if you, the listener, have ever felt that hollow, soul-crushing sensation of the endless swipe, or that sheer, paralyzing dread of walking into a room full of strangers without a safety net, we are going to tear this concept down to the studs.
We really want to understand the deliberate psychological mechanics of how this one event is trying to hack human connection.
The organizers state right up front that environment is everything. They're setting the stage very specifically at the Vine and Barley.
Yeah, they describe it as having a cozy indoor wine lounge intimacy paired perfectly with a breezy, string-lit outdoor patio.
And they're very explicit about the dress code, too. I thought this was interesting.
Oh, the smart casual, summer chic mandate.
Yeah. They literally tell attendees to think of clean jeans, summer dresses, crisp button-downs.
Well, that curation of the physical space and the attire, that's the foundational layer of behavioral architecture.
Behavioral architecture, that sounds intense.
In environmental psychology, we look closely at how a physical space dictates the psychological state of the people inside it.
So you can't just take someone who's been staring at a glowing rectangle in a cubicle all day.
Drop them into a sterile conference room with harsh fluorescent lighting and expect them to suddenly exude warmth and charisma.
Exactly.
The environment has to physically and psychologically disarm them.
And that dress code piece feels crucial. It's like they're asking you to put on a specific uniform for socializing.
Right. You aren't showing up in the sweatpants you've been wearing while doom scrolling on the couch.
And you aren't showing up in a stiff corporate suit either. It acts as a psychological transition zone.
Because we all inhabit different versions of ourselves depending on the context, right?
Right.
Totally. When you leave work, you're often in a defensive, transactional, or problem-solving state of mind. By mandating summer chic, they're forcing you to actively transition into your relaxed social self before you even leave your house.
You're like dressing for serendipity.
That's a great way to put it. And the venue's aesthetics, the string lights in particular, are a classic atmospheric cue.
Soft, warm lighting mimics firelight or starlight, right?
Yes, and it physically softens facial features, which subtly lowers the perceived stakes of interaction. Compare that to harsh, directional lighting that makes everyone feel like they are under a microscope.
Oh, absolutely. And that concept of lowering the stakes really brings us to the dual nature of the event's name, Sip and Sizzle.
It sounds catchy, but the sources break down the actual psychology behind those two words.
So the Sip is about utilizing the venue's selection of boutique wines and craft beers to act as a social lubricant.
You arrive, you get a drink, you ease your nerves.
Then the Sizzle is represented by their logo, which is this retro emblem of two interconnected speech bubbles on fire.
I love that visual. That's supposed to represent the high-energy, fast-paced chemistry of the actual event.
So it's a deliberate manipulation of physiological states.
Yes, the sip, the alcohol, provides a mild depressant effect. It suppresses the central nervous system just enough to lower cortisol levels.
Which blunts that acute social anxiety that naturally spikes when you enter a room of strangers.
Exactly. Plus, it gives your hands something to do. Holding a glass is a well-documented psychological comfort mechanism.
It creates a tiny physical barrier between you and the rest of the world.
Right. But the danger of the sip is that if people become too relaxed, the energy just flatlines.
You just end up with a lethargic, quiet wine bar where everyone is sort of murmuring in corners.
Which is why the sizzle is the structural counterweight. It injects adrenaline and momentum into the room to keep the heart rate elevated.
It's trying to find that perfect Goldilocks zone of human interaction.
And the organizers argue that this specific physical environment is vastly superior to the digital realm. They boldly claim, that you are far more compelling in person than any static filtered profile picture.
Which, sure, sounds great on a marketing brochure.
But it's actually rooted in evolutionary biology. A static image on a screen, or even a short video clip, triggers a very limited, rigid set of cognitive evaluations.
Like we judge symmetry, lighting, and explicit aesthetic markers.
But when you're standing in front of someone in 3 dimensions, you're receiving a massive multisensory data dump.
You're processing their micro-expressions, the cadence and timbre of their voice.
Their posture, how they navigate the physical space, how they treat the bartender. Our brains have evolved over millions of years to process this specific type of 3-dimensional data instantly.
To evaluate potential mates, friends, threats, all of it.
Exactly. We are simply not biologically optimized to evaluate human compatibility in 2 dimensions.
I hear that. I really do. But I gotta play devil's advocate here for a second.
Go for it.
I completely understand the theory that in-person interaction provides richer data. Dating apps are basically digital slot machines.
You sit on your couch, pull the lever, swipe right, hope for a jackpot. Low effort, low reward.
Right, but the organizers are claiming this relaxed wine lounge vibe is the magical cure to high-pressure dating scenes.
They are.
Let's be brutally honest. Isn't a crowded bar, even with boutique wine and string lights, inherently a high-pressure environment for a massive chunk of the population?
Oh, absolutely.
Like, if you know the explicit subtext of the room is, evaluate me and let me evaluate you, doesn't the sip just create a different kind of sensory overload?
That's a really valid point.
How is physically standing in a room full of judging eyes actually less pressure than sitting safely behind a screen?
Well, that's the exact reason why the traditional, unstructured bar environment is a nightmare for so many people.
Because in a regular bar, the social rules are entirely ambiguous.
Exactly. You're constantly burning mental energy trying to decode the room. That ambiguity breeds fear.
Fear of rejection, fear of embarrassment.
Fear of misreading a signal. What this event is attempting to do is borrow the pleasant aesthetic of a relaxed bar, but completely strip away the crippling ambiguity of the social rules.
Okay, so they set up the string-lit stage, but they have to prevent it from devolving into that chaotic, ambiguous awkwardness.
Which is where we get into the actual mechanics of the night, the itinerary.
And here is the single most crucial distinction the sources make, and they stress this heavily.
Yes, very heavily.
This is a speed mingle event. It is absolutely not a traditional speed dating event.
That specific distinction is the structural foundation that makes this whole concept viable.
Because we all know the cultural trope of traditional speed dating. It's strictly one-on-one. You sit at a tiny table across from one other person.
A timer ticks down for 3 or 4 excruciating minutes. It's a high-stakes, rapid-fire job interview for your romantic soul.
The spotlight effect is blinding. If the conversation stalls after 45 seconds, you're both just trapped in this agonizing silence.
Staring at your water glasses until the bell rings. It's incredibly exposing.
So the sources explicitly state they want to obliterate that stiff, high-stakes interview pressure.
And how do they do it? By putting you in groups.
Right. Instead of those one-on-one timed interrogations, this speed mingle groups everyone into tables of 4 to 6 people.
It's not a dyad. It's a micro-party.
And because you're in a group, the timer changes dramatically. You aren't sprinting through a 3-minute drill.
You're sitting with this group for 10 to 15 minutes before the rotation happens.
The organizers say to think of it as, quote, speed dating meets a business after-hours event, meets a great gathering with friends and coworkers.
The psychological shift from a one-on-one dynamic to a group of 4 to 6 is profound. It completely changes how emotional labor is distributed.
Oh, because in a one-on-one traditional speed date, if you drop the conversational ball, the connection dies immediately.
The burden is entirely on you and the other person. But in a group of 5, a natural social scaffolding emerges.
If you're feeling overwhelmed, shy, or just need a moment to collect your thoughts,
You can temporarily adopt the role of the active listener without the interaction grinding to a halt.
the more extroverted personalities at the table will naturally step in to carry the momentum. That makes total sense.
It takes a target off your back. If someone at the table makes a joke, you can just laugh along and still be participating.
You get to be part of a shared experience without having to be the constant center of attention.
And you can observe how someone else interacts with the group, which honestly tells you a lot more about them than how they answer a direct interview question.
Exactly. You get to witness their social agility. How do they handle a disagreement at the table?
Do they dominate the conversation, or do they ask questions to include the quieter people? That is incredibly valuable data for compatibility.
Whether you're looking for a romantic partner or a business collaborator.
And by extending the time to 10 or 15 minutes, you allow the group dynamic to actually settle.
A 3-minute one-on-one interaction is entirely driven by the adrenaline of the initial impression.
10 to 15 minutes allows people to take a breath, establish a rhythm, and actually explore a topic.
Okay, so let's look at the actual timeline of how they orchestrate this. It happens in 3 very distinct phases.
Right. It kicks off at 6:45 p.m. with what they call the pregame and warm-up.
You check in, you get your name tag, and you grab that first drink. There's no forced rotation yet.
The pregame is a mandatory acclimatization period. If you rushed people straight from the parking lot into a seated timed rotation.
Oh man, you'd trigger a collective fight or flight response.
Exactly. The nervous system needs time to regulate. This 30-minute unstructured window allows attendees to visually map the room, locate the exits, find the bar.
And just let their brains subconsciously confirm that they are in a safe environment.
It allows the sip portion of the evening to actually take effect before the demands of the sizzle begin.
Then, at 7:15 p.m., the engine starts. They call this phase fast-track connections.
This is the core of the event. For an hour and 15 minutes, you're locked into these 10 to 15-minute group mingling sessions.
And then the bell rings. The sources note that when the bell rings, 1 or 2 people from each table will rotate to the next group.
Which is brilliant because it continuously mixes the dynamic of the room without blowing up the entire table.
And I gotta say, the bell itself is a fascinating psychological mechanic. It acts as an external, completely neutral authority figure.
The bell is arguably the most vital piece of social technology in the entire room.
Really? More than the drinks or the lights?
Oh, definitely. Think back to your opening scenario in the crowded bar. In unstructured environments, The single hardest part of any conversation is figuring out how to gracefully exit.
Oh, it's the worst. We rely on polite fictions.
We say, I need to use the restroom, or I'm going to grab another drink, or I need to go find my friend.
We use those excuses because we feel a profound sense of guilt when we end an interaction. We don't want to signal rejection.
The bell completely removes that guilt.
It's the ultimate social scapegoat. I'd love to stay and hear more about your stamp collection, but the bell commands me to move.
Precisely. You do not have to reject anyone, and you do not have to awkwardly excuse yourself. The rules of the event dictate the movement.
So because the burden of time management and conversational exit strategies is completely offloaded to the organizer,
The attendees are free to be completely present in the interaction.
then at 8:30 p.m., the structured rotations end, and we enter the third and final phase, the after party.
From 8 through all to 9:00 p.m., the floor is open.
The sources say this is the time to dive deeper into conversations with your favorite matches from the night, or to trade contact info if you want to.
This three-part structure perfectly mirrors a classic narrative arc.
Oh, like in literature.
Yeah. The pregame is the exposition, setting the scene. The fast-track connections are the rising action and the climax.
And the after party is the resolution.
And sociologically, the after-party is where the real magic happens.
Wait, why is that? Isn't it just back to the chaotic bar scene we started with?
No, because the context has fundamentally changed.
Oh!
During the structured hour and 15 minutes, you've rapidly built up a vast reservoir of shared context with dozens of people in the room.
Oh, I see. So when the structural training wheels are removed at 8:30, you aren't approaching a stranger at a bar anymore.
Exactly. You're approaching the person who laughed at the same terrible joke you did 20 minutes ago at table 4.
You're walking up to the group you had a spirited debate with during round 2.
The ice isn't just broken. It has been completely melted and evaporated. The shared experience of the event itself provides an immediate, safe conversational entry point.
Okay, I love the arc of the evening, but I have to push back on the math here just a little bit.
Sure, let's hear it.
You're at a table of 4 to 6 people for 10 to 15 minutes. If you divide that airtime evenly, you're still only getting a couple of minutes of actual speaking time per person to make an impression.
That's true.
I kind of view these mini connections like movie trailers.
Ooh, good analogy.
Thanks. You don't get the whole plot, you don't know the deep character arcs, but you know almost immediately if you want to buy a ticket to see the whole film.
Right.
But if you only have a few minutes of actual airtime before the bell rings and the rotation shifts the group, aren't people just going to inevitably fall back on their most superficial, rehearsed judgments?
Yes.
Like, how do you actually get past a basic physical assessment or a superficial vibe check when the clock is ticking and you're sharing the stage with 4 other people?
It is a highly valid concern, and it is the exact trap that destroys traditional networking mixers.
Because when time is scarce and pressure is high, human beings default to heuristics, mental shortcuts.
We fall back on the conversational scripts we have practiced 1,000 times because they are safe.
We ask about the weather, we ask if they had trouble finding parking.
And most predictably, we ask, so what do you do for work?
The worst question.
The fatal flaw of these scripts is that they yield incredibly low-value data about who a person actually is, what they value, and whether you are genuinely compatible with them on any meaningful level.
Which brings us perfectly to the organizer's solution to that exact problem.
Yes, they anticipated this.
They know that if you put a timer on a table, people panic and talk about the weather. So the organizers of the Speed Mingle actively banned the most common social crutch in America: small talk.
They have essentially gamified authenticity.
I love that. The sources explicitly promise zero awkwardness by placing a specific tool on every single table.
It's called 52 plus 2, the card game.
This is a brilliant behavioral intervention, gotta say.
They recognize that if they just put 5 strangers at a table, tell them they have 12 minutes and say, okay, talk.
The panic will instantly set in. The silence will be deafening.
So they provide a physical conversation catalyst by literally banning the default question, what do you do? And forcing attendees to draw a card from a deck, they are aggressively disrupting the standard conversational autopilot.
The sources explain that this deck of cards is specifically designed to bypass superficial chit-chat and jump straight into thought-provoking questions.
It's about personality, perspective, and passions. It's meant to reveal the real you, bypassing the resume rundown entirely.
So what's happening psychologically here is the introduction of a secondary external scapegoat?
Exactly. We already established that the bell manages the time and the exits.
And the deck of cards manages the content.
Think about it. If I sit down at a table with 4 strangers and suddenly look at you and ask a deep, probing question about your childhood dreams, or your biggest fear...
Or your most controversial opinion.
Right. I look intense. I might look socially uncalibrated or intrusive.
I am taking a massive social risk by escalating the intimacy of the conversation that quickly without earning it. You would sound like a podcast host or a serial killer or a philosopher.
None of which play particularly well in the first 5 minutes of meeting someone at a bar. The social penalty for being too deep too fast is high. But if I pull a physical card from a deck resting on the table and read that exact same deep question off the card,
You're no longer being intense, you're just playing the game.
the deck of cards completely democratizes the vulnerability. It absorbs the social risk.
Because humans fundamentally crave deep, meaningful conversation, don't we? We want to be known and we want to understand others.
But we are terrified of the social penalty of being the one to initiate it.
So gamification lowers our defenses because it frames vulnerability as a set of rules we are collectively agreeing to follow for a set period.
Yes. If you give a weird or deeply honest answer, you aren't a weirdo. You're just a good sport playing the game.
I look at those 52+2 cards like social training wheels for adults who have completely forgotten how to ride a bike.
That's sad, but true.
We've spent the last decade curating our digital avatars, managing our personal brands online, and swiping on curated profiles.
A lot of people simply do not know how to sit at a table and verbally spar in real time anymore without a screen to hide behind.
But I do have a major pushback here.
I figured you might.
Doesn't forcing a structured, printed card game onto what is supposed to be a romantic or spontaneous social interaction feel incredibly clinical? Like suddenly I am at a mandatory corporate HR team building retreat doing trust falls and icebreakers. How does answering a flashcard generated by an event planner actually generate genuine, romantic, or even platonic sizzle?
It is a very fair critique, and on paper it certainly sounds contrived. The idea of reading off flashcards at a bar feels antithetical to romance.
It totally does.
However, the crucial point is that the sizzle does not come from the card itself. The card is nothing more than a spark.
Oh, I see.
The real chemistry, the sizzle, comes entirely from the reaction to the card. It comes from the spontaneous laughter that erupts when someone gives a shockingly honest or hilarious answer.
Or it comes from the friendly debate that breaks out among the 5 people at the table when 2 people fundamentally disagree on an answer.
Exactly. It shifts the dynamic from a polite, rigid interview to an engaging, dynamic group activity.
You're seeing how a person thinks on their feet. You're seeing how they handle a curveball question.
You are watching how they interact with others at the table.
Yeah.
Do they listen when someone else is answering, or are they just waiting for their turn to speak?
That real-time behavioral observation is where chemistry is revealed, much more so than hearing someone recite their rehearsed resume for the 100th time.
The card is just the excuse to get people to drop their guard.
So we have the environment, we have the group dynamics.
We have the bells saving us from awkward exits and the cards saving us from boring small talk.
They are trying to manufacture serendipity.
Yeah.
But here is the massive elephant in the room.
What's that?
Even the best conversation prompts in the world, sitting in the most beautiful stringlit patio, will fail miserably if the people sitting at the table want completely different things out of the night.
Oh, 100%.
If I am at that table actively looking for a romantic partner and you are sitting across from me looking for a business mentor, we are going to be talking completely past each other, no matter what deep questions the cards ask.
And that misalignment of intent is the silent, pervasive killer of almost all adult social events.
It really is. You go to a standard networking mixer or a community event, and it is a mess of conflicting desires.
Half the people are secretly looking for a date, while the other half are aggressively pitching their startup, and a few people just wanted to get out of the house.
It creates a toxic, hidden agenda problem. Everyone is playing a draining guessing game, trying to figure out what the person across from them actually wants.
Which perfectly sets up the most fascinating mechanic of this entire event. The 4 pillars of intent. This is wild. The sources revealed that the matching at this speed mingle is not just based on who happens to be standing next to the bar or who bought a ticket.
They are actively matching people by purpose. not just proximity.
When you register for the event online, you must select a deal-breaker category that defines exactly why you are walking into that room.
And they break this down into 4 very distinct, openly acknowledged pillars. Let's start with the first 2. Okay, the first one is networking, professional ascent. This is for expanding professional horizons, finding mentors, collaborators, and industry insights.
This first pillar is highly pragmatic. It acknowledges that people absolutely want to network and build their careers, but they hate the stale, fluorescent-lit, formal conference room vibe.
They want to do it dynamically, perhaps with a craft beer in hand, in a setting that feels less rigid.
Exactly. The second pillar is where it gets really interesting to me. It's called friendship, social synergy.
They described it specifically as finding a reliable workout buddy, a co-conspirator for late-night debates, or a brunch partner. They explicitly call it cultivating deep platonic bonds.
This is incredibly rare to see formalized in this way, and it speaks volumes about the current state of society. Making genuine friends as an adult
Completely detached from your workplace or your children's school network?
is notoriously painfully difficult. Our modern society has largely dismantled the third places, the community centers, bowling leagues, and local clubs that used to facilitate adult platonic matchmaking naturally.
So by giving friendship equal weight and formal structure, right alongside romance and professional networking, the organizers are validating a massive, desperately underserved social need.
Millions of people aren't looking for a spouse or a job. They just want someone to get a coffee with on a Saturday.
Right. Now, the third pillar is what you would naturally expect at a mingle event: dating, romance, and real chemistry.
They pitch this as skipping the superficial digital profiles to find an undeniable in-person spark.
Completely bypassing the expensive, drawn-out scheduling and disappointment of a typical first date from an app.
And then we have the fourth pillar.
Which, frankly, blew my mind that they included it so openly right next to professional networking.
It's called casual fun, spontaneous adult play.
The source material strictly defines it as being for those seeking spontaneous hookups, low-commitment, high-energy interactions with clearly defined boundaries.
It is a radically transparent, almost shocking approach to event design. By putting casual fun right next to professional ascent on the registration form, they are completely dismantling the hidden agendas that ruin so many interactions.
In most social settings, the person looking for a spontaneous hookup has to cloak their intentions under the guise of casual networking or friendly chatter.
Which inherently leads to miscommunication, crossed boundaries, and resentment when one party realizes they have been misreading the interaction.
The sheer brilliance and, honestly, the potential for absolute chaos of this is wild. Think about the logistics behind the scenes.
Yes, the sources say that after you pick your primary deal-breaker category, you also select your general interests.
Things like arts and culture, food and drink, intellectual stimulation, sports and activities.
Then, they feed this data into a proprietary algorithm.
The algorithm calculates your compatibility percentage with other attendees and uses that data to decide which tables you rotate to.
It ensures you are seated with people who align with both your interests and, most importantly, your intent.
It's like a social Swiss Army knife, you know? You pull out the specific tool you need for whatever specific season of your life you're currently in.
And this algorithm acts as a silent, invisible curator. It is the bouncer at the door of your specific table.
Right. If your primary intent is to find a business mentor in the tech space, the algorithm ensures that the precious 10 to 15 minutes you spend at a table are not entirely wasted sitting next to someone whose deal-breaker category is spontaneous adult play.
It protects the integrity of the time constraint. If you only have 10 minutes, you need to be talking to someone playing the same sport as you.
But wait, let's really unpack the logistics of this, because I see a potential collision.
Okay, what kind of collision?
If I am looking for a professional collaborator, and the bell rings and 1 or 2 people rotate to my table to join the group, what happens if someone sits down who marked casual fun? Does the algorithm strictly segregate the physical room? Is there a networking zone in the corner and a casual fun zone by the patio? Or is it a giant mix, and the algorithm just tries its best to populate the tables with a dominant intent? Because if I am pitching a B2B software startup idea and the person across from me is looking for a spontaneous hookup, that is a wildly uncomfortable collision of contexts.
Yeah, that would be awkward. The source materials don't explicitly detail a physical floor plan segregation, but logically, To maintain the promise of the deal-breaker categories, the algorithmic sorting must group people by their primary intent first.
Before filtering by shared interests.
Exactly. You would likely have tables heavily weighted toward a specific pillar. However, because it is a group setting of 4 to 6 people, and because people are complex, there is inevitably going to be some blending.
Especially during the unstructured pregame and after-party phases.
Right. And the chaos you mentioned is partially mitigated by the group dynamic itself. If one person at a table of 6 is misaligned in their intent, the group consensus will naturally steer the conversation toward a neutral middle ground.
And again, the 52+2 card game serves as the ultimate equalizer in those moments.
The card dictates the conversation, preventing anyone from hijacking the table for their specific agenda.
Okay, so let's play this out to the end of the night.
Right.
You've navigated the pregame. You have survived the fast-track connections with your curated groups at your tables.
You've answered the deep questions from the 52+2 cards.
The 8:30 p.m. bell has rung. The unstructured after-party has wrapped up. The string lights are dimming, and you are heading to your car. What happens next?
The hardest part.
Right. How does this event handle the inherently agonizing phase of trying to figure out if the person you liked actually liked you back? How do we handle the exchange of phone numbers without it feeling like middle school trauma all over again?
This brings us to the final and perhaps most elegant phase of the night. The post-game, data, dignity, and smart sync.
The organizers have explicitly engineered a solution for the fear of face-to-face rejection, which is the final massive hurdle of any in-person mingling event.
So how does it work?
The sources outline a double-blind scorecard system. Throughout the night, you have a physical card. You simply mark down the names or numbers of the people you genuinely enjoyed talking to, whether for networking, friendship, or romance.
So you do not have to ask for a single phone number all night if you don't want to.
Exactly. You hand in your card at the end of the event, and within 24 hours, the organizers securely email you your mutual matches.
Furthermore, they emphasize a strict privacy policy. All post-event messaging happens safely through their proprietary Smart Sync web app.
So you aren't even giving out your real phone number right away.
The double-blind scorecard system is a masterpiece of preserving human dignity. Let's say you have an incredible 10-minute conversation with someone at your table.
In a traditional bar setting, at the end of that conversation, you have to muster the courage to ask for their number.
If they say no, or if they give you a fake number, the rejection is immediate, visceral, public, and deeply humiliating.
It triggers a massive pain response in the brain, and it usually ruins the rest of your night.
It makes you want to crawl into a hole and never speak to a stranger again.
It really does.
The fear of that specific moment is why most people never approach anyone. The scorecard delays and privatizes the evaluation process. You only ever find out about the people who also said yes to you.
The rejections, the people who didn't check your name, are completely silent and invisible.
You never know who passed on you.
Oh.
It heavily insulates the ego, which in turn encourages people to take far more chances and check more boxes than they ever would if they had to ask for the connection verbally face-to-face.
It's like waiting for your test results, but the fun kind. You wake up the next day, check your email, and see who matched. It extends the excitement of the event into the next day.
But there is another massive component to their privacy policy that the sources highlight, and it is a fascinating philosophical stance.
Oh, right. The organizers state that they maintain strict privacy regarding event demographics.
They absolutely do not disclose specific registration data, including head counts, age ranges, gender identities, or racial backgrounds to other participants prior to or after the event.
This is a radical, profound departure from the architecture of modern dating apps.
On an app, demographic filtering is literally the very first thing you do. You set rigid sliders for age, height, distance, education level, sometimes even religion or political affiliation.
You filter out thousands of human beings before you even see a face, let alone hear them speak.
The organizers here are attempting to foster an environment of what we might call blind inclusivity. They want connections to happen organically, based on the energy in the room, the answers to the cards, and the physical multisensory chemistry.
Rather than allowing people to prejudge the guest list based on rigid demographic criteria.
It is the ultimate contrast. Dating apps give you all the demographic data up front, but absolutely no sense of the actual person.
This Speed Mingle event gives you the person up front, in 3 dimensions, laughing at a table with you, engaging with a group, but completely hides the demographic data until you meet them.
It forces you to evaluate the human being before you evaluate their statistical resume.
Exactly. It forces you to confront your own ingrained biases. You might find yourself having an incredible, dynamic 15-minute conversation with someone who falls slightly outside of the rigid age bracket or background you would normally set on an app.
Because you are exposed to their personality, their humor, and their intellect first through the safety of the group dynamic and the card game. That initial demographic hurdle suddenly becomes entirely irrelevant.
It is a very noble, ambitious attempt to re-engineer how we perceive compatibility in the modern age.
It really is.
But I understand the noble goal. It sounds beautiful in theory, this utopian vision of connecting soul to soul without prejudice.
I sense another but coming.
But again, let's put on our critical thinking hats and live in the real world for a second. I have to push back on the practical viability of this for a paid event.
Okay, let's look at the practical side.
People are spending their hard-earned money to be here. The sources say day of event registration is almost $40.
Yep.
If someone pays $40 at the door, explicitly expecting to find a romantic connection, and they walk into the Vine Barley to find that absolutely no one in the room matches their preferred dating demographic, whether that's age, gender identity, or whatever specific thing they are seeking.
Aren't they going to feel incredibly cheated?
Right. Isn't withholding that demographic data a massive risk for consumer satisfaction? Is blind inclusivity practically viable when people are paying for a specific outcome?
That is the ultimate tension of this specific business model, and it is an undeniable risk.
If a 25-year-old man attends hoping to meet women his age, and the algorithm places him in a room that happens to be predominantly 50-year-old men looking for professional networking,
He is going to feel severely misaligned despite the algorithm's best efforts to group him. The organizers are heavily relying on the mingle aspect of the event to cushion this blow.
their implicit argument is that even if you don't find a romantic match, you still got a craft beer, you still played a fun psychological game.
You got out of your house and you practiced your social skills in a safe environment.
But you're absolutely right to question it. Human beings are notoriously protective of their time and money. Deliberate ambiguity regarding demographics requires a massive, almost unprecedented amount of trust from the attendee.
It requires a massive leap of faith. You have to trust the organizer's process more than you trust your own rigid filtering habits.
You have to believe that the friction of the real world is better than the frictionless perfection of your phone.
And that brings us to the end of our deep dive today. We have thoroughly unpacked the evolution of the modern mixer.
The Sip and Sizzle Speed Mingle happening in Port St. Lucie is clearly not just about finding a quick date for a Tuesday night.
It is a meticulously engineered, multi-layered ecosystem designed specifically to force us out of our digital silos.
Because the organizers are recognizing a fundamental truth.
The digital tools we built to make connection easier have actually caused our social muscles to atrophy.
By using a curated physical environment to ease anxiety, group table dynamics to distribute emotional labor, strict timers and bells to remove the guilt of rejection,
Algorithmic intent matching to solve the hidden agenda problem, and literally a deck of flashcards to force vulnerability.
they are attempting to provide a heavily reinforced safety structure. They are building scaffolding so that we can slowly remember how to be human again.
And that leads me to a final, somewhat provocative thought for you to mull over as we wrap up.
Yeah, hit us with it.
The source material proudly, repeatedly champions the idea that you are far more compelling in person than on a digital app. They champion the natural, organic spark of in-real-life chemistry.
Right.
But ironically, to prove that point, to get you to actually experience that natural connection, this event relies on a proprietary computer algorithm to match you,
A web app to message safely.
a strict ringing bell to manage your time, and a literal deck of printed cards to facilitate a simple conversation.
It leaves you wondering, has technology so deeply fractured our innate social skills that the only way we can return to natural, real-life connection is by wrapping it in layers of artificial rules and gamified systems?
Think about that. The next time you are standing at a party, the silence stretches just a little too long,
Yeah.
and you find yourself panicking and asking a total stranger.
Thank you for listening.
And watching on the new Speed Mingle TV network.